Hello and welcome. With the NFL being right around the corner and a lot of these NFL teams basically have their rosters or have who they're going to have and are basically set up to start going in motion, it is time that I thought now where I'll talk about some division winners and some potential playoff teams. I thought this is now would be the best time to do this as well because the whole Deshaun Watson thing has finally been settled, so that's basically the last big looming thing for one of the playoff teams that could be possibly in contention. With his ruling, he'll be out 11 games, so he'll return I forget which week it is, because they have the bye. I think it's week 12, I want to say. Yeah, he returns week 12 to play against the Texans, which is kind of funny that the NFL did it that way, but regardless, they finally came to a decision. The NFL's probably going to look to move past this, and then now basically it's just going to come down to now what's going to happen with the Browns, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do for those first 11 games without Deshaun Watson. But yeah, just as long as the Browns can stay and survive, this team could potentially find their way into the playoffs because they have a good team. It's just, yeah, I'm sure they expect to have Deshaun Watson a few more games. But regardless, I'm sure now that the team's happy that the decision's been made. I'm sure Deshaun Watson's happy the decision's been made. It's time to get this all moved past them and move on with playing some football. So now, like I said, in this one, I'm basically just going to go over some of the division winners and potential playoff teams and just some reasons why I think those teams are going to win their divisions potentially. So I think I'm going to start off first with the AFC. I'm going to start off first, with AFC. I'm going to start with the AFC South. Obviously, as you can see, I am a Colts fan. This isn't me being biased or anything, but I truly believe this is a year that the Colts are probably going to win the division. The Titans took a little bit of a step back losing A.J. Brown. And while the Texans and the Jaguars are both a little bit better than they were last year, they're both still basically trying to find out who they are as teams, and Trevor Lawrence is only in his second year, so both those teams look to take a step up. Same with Davis Mills, he's in his second year, but regardless, those are two teams looking to take a step forward. I don't think they're going to be too much of an impact this year. It's basically going to come down to the Colts and the Titans. The Colts lost both their games last year against this team, and when it comes to this year and being different now, they got an upgrade at quarterback with Matt Ryan being over Carson Wentz, and the only real question is going to be the receiving core when it comes for the Colts. But from some of the looks and everything, they've been looking like they're all right. So hopefully that can translate into something. But yeah, regardless, the Titans are still a pretty good team, but I just think that the Colts are a little bit better than them this year, and the Colts have definitely upgraded from what they were last year. So I think regardless, even if a split, the Colts should do just enough to win the division, and it shouldn't be an issue over the Titans. Now, when it comes to the AFC East, I think this one is a pretty easy one as well. When it comes to the AFC East, I think the Bills are going to win the AFC East. No offense to the Patriots, Dolphins, or Jets, but the Bills are just that much better of a team than all of them. When it comes to the Dolphins, they did get Tyreek Hill as an upgrade, and they're looking on making Tua the guy this year. And they're looking like they want to take the steps in the right direction and still slowly but surely become a really good team again. But the Dolphins have a potential chance to do something. They did get Tyreek Hill, and they did add some upgrades here and there throughout their team. And the same goes with the Patriots. The Patriots added Devontae Parker, for example. And they have some other upgrades as well in their team. They're looking to take a step up, but the Bills are just that much better than all of them, and the Bills are basically bringing back their whole core from last year, and that team last year went 10-7, so they're definitely looking to take a step up from last year and get a few extra wins here and there. When it comes to the rest of the division, it's pretty much it's going to be hard for the Dolphins and the Pats. Basically their competition is the Bills. If they can beat the Bills, then they look really good for going into the future, but the Bills are potentially looking at having a 13-4 year, or being really, really dominant potentially. So, and they potentially might not even lose a game in their division this year with how good they could be. So, yeah, when it comes to the AFC East, the Bills should pretty much have that division on lockdown with how good they are. Now, the Patriots and Dolphins both could give them some trouble. I'm not saying they are just going to completely disregard these teams and just destroy them, but just the way the Bills are set up, they're looking like they should have. Everyone's power rankings, they basically have them as Super Bowl favorites. So, it's going to be hard for the other teams in the division to try and beat them. But, there is a chance they do it. But, like I said, it's looking like it's the Bills' division to lose at this point. Now, when it comes to the AFC, those were only two divisions I found that were pretty easy to do. When it comes to the rest, I actually kind of struggled a bit. When it came to the AFC North, that's between the Ravens and the Bengals. And after some thought, I just think that I don't know if it was the fact that no one's ever won it back-to-back that was getting into my head or what, but just looking at the teams and trying to decide who was going to be better, who's going to do this and that, I just ended up choosing the Ravens. I think when that division is going to be potentially tough because between the Steelers look like they might be pretty good this year. Their defense has always been good. the past few seasons, and now it's just going to depend on Mitchell Trubisky and Kenny Pickett between who plays the most and how they get the wins and all that. But I don't think the Steelers, like, they might get to the wild card if anything, but I don't think they're going to contend for the division. And then with the Browns, Deshaun just missing 11 games, I just feel like that's way too many games for him to really, like, matter that much this year when it comes to division. So it basically came down to the Ravens and Bengals, and like I said, I just feel like the Ravens are going to edge them out this year. I mean, regardless, I think it's going to be like by a game or two that they win the division. If that, I think it's going to be really, really close. I mean, the Bengals shocked everyone last year and played really amazing. Joe Burrow had an amazing season, so did Jamar Chase. But teams are going to be a little more looking for that this year and, like, trying to test the Bengals. That doesn't mean they're going to take a step back or anything, but it's just the Ravens have been proven to be really, really good. And I mean, the Ravens were even the 1 seed last year before all the injuries and everything. I mean, they just had an insane year that, like, they went from being really, really good to all of a sudden, boom, they lost like 7 games in a row, and all of a sudden their season was over. So, like, this year, and then Lamar in the contract year and everything potentially, I mean, I think they're going to definitely take that step up this year, and for the most part, I think the Ravens are probably going to win, like I said, by like a game or two. I think the Ravens are going to win that division. It's not going to be like too much, but regardless, I mean, it's going to be tough for the Bengals and everyone, like I said, to repeat, just because everyone's going to be looking for that this year. But talent-wise, I think the Ravens just have them beat a little bit. So I just think, yeah, the Ravens are going to take back that division this year and basically, like, by a game or two, if that. I think this was like one of the hardest choices I had to make when it came to this division. When it came to the AFC West, I mean, they have 4 really good teams between the Raiders, Chargers, Chiefs, and Broncos. And I mean, just whatever, everyone has all the hypes around the Chargers right now, and just for whatever reason, I'm not discluding the Chargers from the chance that they're going to win or their division's going to be theirs, but just for whatever reason, it's just the repeated history of the past few seasons. They've gotten just right there, and then they somehow mess it up. Like last year, they just missed the playoffs when they probably should have been in. So, just for that, I mean, I think that might be a wild card team, but I honestly think it's between the Broncos and Chiefs for this division. I mean, Russell Wilson had that weird hand injury last year, and he came back and it didn't seem right, but he's still a pretty good quarterback. I mean, he was finishing in like the top, like, I think, what was it, like 2 years ago or whatever. He was finished in the top, like, I think like 2 years ago he was number 2 in the players voting for best players in the NFL, and I mean, he was that close to number 1, and I mean, he had a weird year last year where it just felt like everything wasn't clicking in Seattle and everything. So now that he's going to the Broncos, he's on a new team where he has a little bit more control and everything. So the Broncos are set to go. They have a pretty good team and everything, but so basically, yeah, I think it's going to come down to them and the Chiefs, and I think that as good as the Broncos are going to be, I think the Chiefs are just going to edge them out this year. I mean, regardless of losing, they did lose Tyreek Hill and everything, and they did lose Byron Pringle, and then like a few more pieces. But I mean, this is still the Kansas City Chiefs. They're still really, really good. Patrick Mahomes has been a really good quarterback, and I mean, it's still their division to lose because they've proven for the past few years that even as this division's got better, they've proven that they're the top of the division, and it's their division to lose, and that they aren't going to let anybody really take it from them. So I mean, like, I think when it comes down to it, like the Chargers, Broncos, and no offense to the Raiders, I don't think the Raiders are going to necessarily win the division. I still think they're like, there's nothing against Derek Carr. I still think they're like potentially like a year or two away from like being that good. I mean, they got the upgrade of Devontae Adams, which is really nice. Their offense is really good, but their defense is a little bit weaker, and I think they need a little help on the back end. So I think that maybe after like a year, if they get somebody else to help them in the back end, that they could maybe contend. But between like the Chargers, Broncos, and Chiefs, I think it's going to come down to like a game, 2 or 3. Like between 1 to 3 games, I think is basically what it's going to come down to, who's going to win the division. I just think with the Chiefs' experience, and I feel like kind of that hunger after losing to the Bengals last year, they're going to be the ones to edge out the division. But I mean, both these teams, like I said, but this is like kind of the same thing as like the AFC North, where both these teams are really, really good. So I mean, it could go down to either team really, but I just think that for the purposes of that they've proven it before, and that it's Russell Wilson's first year with the Broncos, I think the Chiefs are going to be the ones who take a hold of that division. Now, when it comes to the wild card, I basically the last like few teams I just talked about are going to be the ones I see making the wild card, and that's the Bengals, Chargers, and the Broncos. I just think with how good those teams are set to go, and I think, like I said, the Chargers haven't been able to win the division, but I think they're going to take that step up this year and have a good enough record to get in the wild card. I think it's just going to be a similar thing to how it was for the NFC West last year, where they had 3 of their teams make the playoffs. So yeah, I just think that this team, I think all three of those teams are ready to go and they're just right there. But yeah, for the Bengals, they just lost in the Super Bowl last year. The Chargers were one game away from the playoffs last year, and then the Broncos were a good quarterback from potentially maybe being a playoff team. So I think that all three of those teams have a really bright chance to have a really good season this year. And there's two dark horse teams that I could see. So basically, that's set, those few teams. So before I say that, yeah. So for the AFC, the playoffs potentially are going to be, this is in no order, by the way, of seeds. This is just how I wrote it down. It's going to be Ravens for the North, Colts for the South, Bills for the East, and then Chiefs for the West. And the three wildcard teams are going to be the Bengals, Chargers, and Broncos. When it comes to a dark horse team, I think there's two potential teams in the AFC that are going to be like trending dark horse teams that actually like have a realistic chance of making the playoffs. When it comes to like the rest of the AFC teams after these two, I think they have a chance to be good, but I don't see any of them as really like playoff teams. I think they're going to be like just outside the bubble playoff teams. But the two teams that I potentially see that could potentially make a run at the playoffs are the Raiders and the Browns. Now, for the Raiders' purpose, it's because they are in a like really, really good division, so there's a chance that one of those teams are not going to make the playoffs in that division. And just based on like how all the other teams look, it looks like the Raiders are the one who's going to be the odd man out. But I mean, last year they found their way into the playoffs. I mean, they won their way in towards the last two games of the season, so there's a chance that they find their way to bring that back this year, especially since now they have Devontae Adams. But now that, like I said, they're just in a really tough division, so I think they're going to end up being the odd team out. But I wouldn't be surprised if they made the playoffs, but it just doesn't look good for them. And then when it comes to the Browns are another really good roster, but it's just, yeah, with Deshaun Watson missing 11 games, I mean, no offense to Jacoby Brissett, but I don't know, like no offense to Jacoby Brissett, but I don't think he's going to be able to do anything like super, super significant to make the Browns like any better than Deshaun Watson would have made them. So that team's potentially, just looking at making. They have a chance to make a run at the playoffs, but I think this year is just more of a. Since they lost Deshaun Watson for those 11 games, they are trying to make the wild card, but I just don't know how they're going to be able to do it. Since it's 11 games now, not the 6 like it originally could have been. Now it's time for the NFC. The NFC I feel like is a little bit easier than the AFC. I feel like the AFC is potentially like wide open this year with the amount of teams that could do some damage. When it comes to the NFC, it's a little bit more closed. I mean, there's still that chance, but there's like I just feel like the divisions are in more of control this year, and it's just going to come to like who's going to be the wild card teams. When it comes to the NFC North, the Vikings were really, really close for me on being the team that I thought might be able to do it, but it's just with Aaron Rodgers still being there, it's the Packers division to lose. There's rumors too that this is one of the best defenses that he's ever had, and that we're one of the best defenses that have been in Green Bay potentially even. So the fact that they still have Aaron Rodgers, I mean, the receiving core has enough that I think they'll be able to get by. And I mean, between A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, they have really good running backs, and they have Aaron Rodgers. So I mean, between all that, they have enough that the offense can be all right, and the defense should be able to help them win all these games. So basically, the Vikings the last few years, when it comes down to the big game where they need to win against the Packers, they end up losing, or they lose some division game they shouldn't, and then boom, they basically lose their chance. So I think it's the Packers division to lose, and they should look like they're going to have a promising year this year. They look like they're going to have a promising year this year. When it comes to the NFC South, I mean, Tom Brady's still in that division, so that's basically his division to lose. I know he had his issue with the Saints last year, but I mean, there's no way he should lose that division. Between the Falcons and Saints, I mean, they're still trying to find themselves this year and figure out what they're going to do moving forward now that they've lost, like, some of their big pieces have been there forever. And then the Panthers, they're just, like, a mess right now. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey stays healthy and Baker ends up starting and going on a vengeance tour, they could potentially be a troublemaking team and do some damage because they do have a decent roster. It's just with Matt Rule being questionable as coach right now, I don't know how this team's going to really do much of anything. I think they're going to potentially be like an all-right team, but they still have a lot to prove right now, and potentially it's just like they don't know what their future is as of right now when it comes to coaching and the direction they're going to be, so they're kind of still trying to figure out themselves. So with the Bucs, I mean, they do lose a lot of weapons, but I mean, Tom Brady is still there, and their defense is still pretty darn good, so I mean, that's basically, I see it as Tom Brady's division to lose, and the Bucs are trying to get back to that Super Bowl as well. When it comes to the NFC East, it was between the Cowboys and Eagles, and this was really tough for me. I think basically it could come down to like either team, regardless. And I mean, both of these teams are potentially good. I mean, the wide receivers for the Cowboys are looking interesting and scary a little bit, but for the Eagles, I mean, their offense last year when it came to passing was kind of mediocre at best. So when it comes between these two teams, I mean, it's basically a flip of a coin. I have the Cowboys winning the division. If the Eagles win, I wouldn't be shocked, but I just think that the Cowboys are going to win the extra game or two they need to. And I believe, if I'm right, their schedule's a little bit. I know they're same division and everything, but I think their schedule tends to be. I think they have like an extra game or two that's like a little bit nicer that will help them win. But I just think that the Cowboys. I think it's just because the Eagles are still a little bit new. This Jalen Hurts' like year where he has to prove it. I think the Eagles are still going to be really, really good, but I just think because they're still kind of getting the nucleus together, and they aren't as established that it's going to take a little bit of a minute for them to win. I think they'll probably win the division next year if I had to guess. Like I said though, I wouldn't be shocked they win it this year, but they're probably going to win it next year, and they're going to spend this year like getting together and finding out the true identity. Now they have like AJ Brown and all of these other pieces. So I think the Cowboys are just gonna happen to win. Will I be shocked they lose? No, but I just think the Cowboys are a little bit more established as a team, and I know they're a little bit weaker than they have been in years past, or do well enough to win the division. When it comes to the NFC West, I think the Rams are. When it comes to the NFC West, I think that's the Rams division to lose again. I mean, other than losing Odell, but they replaced it with Allen Robinson. Not comparing the two, but Allen Robinson seems to be like he'll be all right for them. So I mean, the Rams are going to be potentially. I mean, the Rams have a chance to win the Super Bowl again this year. I mean, they're a really, really good team, and Sean McVay's a really good coach. Matt Stafford played really well, and they have a really good offense paired with a really good defense. So I think it's their division to lose, basically. I mean, there's some other good teams in there, like the 49ers and Cardinals, but between the Cardinals, like, still trying to figure out who they are fully. Between the Cardinals and their late season struggles, and then the 49ers having a new quarterback, I mean, the Rams seem the most seasoned in this division, and between all the good teams, they seem like they're the most ready to go. I mean, between like Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp on the offense, and then I mean, the running back game for the Rams is a little bit scary, but Cooper Kupp, Matt Stafford, and the passing game should be all right. And then they have Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey on defense, and then past that, they still have a lot of other good, really defenders around them. So that's the Rams division to lose. I mean, I think they should be able to go this year, and potentially, I think they're going to probably potentially be in the Super Bowl again. It could potentially be like a Rams-Bills Super Bowl, like Rams-Chiefs, something like that. I don't see who's going to stop the Rams this year unless they end up stopping themselves. Now, when it comes to the wild card for the NFC, I think that the Eagles and Cardinals are going to be like two of the teams locked in for the wild card. I think because both those teams are the closest, I think, to winning their divisions behind the other two teams. So with how good the Cardinals offense will be later in the season too, when they get D-Hop back, and between Hollywood Brown if he comes back and all that and is good, they have the chance to go. And then for the Eagles, like I said, they have AJ Brown, and they're still looking to find themselves. But I think they're still going to be a really good team because they started coming on to something last year. When it comes to that last wild card spot, I think it's going to be between either the Vikings or the 49ers. And I think, personally, I'm just going to lean towards the Vikings right now because they're a little bit more established. I mean, I know the 49ers have a really good team and they're ready to go, but Trey Lance is a huge, huge question mark. He's been playing really good, and he's shown some promise, but he hasn't played a full NFL season yet, so it's hard to say what they're going to do. I mean, he just has to be all right with how good that team is, and they could go. But it's just with the Vikings, I think they have the new coach now. So, I mean, Kirk Cousins looks like is hopefully going to play a little bit better. They assume since they got the new coach that he won't be butting heads like he did with Zimmer. So, I mean, the Viking between like Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, I mean, that offense is really, really good. The defense is still pretty good as well, and I mean, the Vikings are. Potentially, I mean, they could even win their division over the Packers and change everything. Will they? I don't think so, but they're really, really close. So when it comes to the NFC then, I have, for the NFC North, it's the Packers. The NFC South, I have the Buccaneers. NFC East, I have the Cowboys. The NFC West, I have the Rams. And then for the wild card, I have the Philadelphia Eagles, Arizona Cardinals, and the Minnesota Vikings, I think, are all going to make the playoffs. Now, due to that, I have like 2 or 3 dark horse teams. One of them is like the darkest of horses. But between the two, now since I didn't have the 49ers make, I think the 49ers and Panthers are 2 teams that could potentially make a run at it. If Baker has a really good season like he did for the Browns that one year where they beat the Steelers in the playoffs, I forget, it's like 2-3 years ago, I want to say. If he can find a way to play like that, I mean, there's enough pieces around the Panthers between DJ Moore, Christian McCaffrey, and then Brian Burns on the defense, and J.C. Horn if he comes back healthy, that team could actually like do some damage and end up going to the playoffs and being scary for a few teams. But because Baker might only be there 1 year, and there's the whole issue, is he going to start over Sam Darnold yet? They still haven't fully decided. It's going to be a real big question mark because truly I don't know. I mean, like, I could see them doing good, but it's still the Panthers, and Christian McCaffrey hasn't been able to play fully yet for 2 seasons. So for the last few seasons, he's been hurt and hasn't been able to play fully. So it's a big question mark for them. I really don't know. And then the darkest of horses I have, and this is kind of just a funny pick, is the Detroit Lions. I mean, the Lions are bad. They won 3 games last year, but I just, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, if it's like the hype that's around them or all that, but I mean, they were really close to winning. I mean, they could have won like 6-7 games last year, but they lost to like game-winning kicks, an NFL record kick. So, and I mean, it all comes down to basically like Jared Goff. I mean, the Lions' offense they aren't terrible. I mean, they have decent running backs. The quarterback's not the worst. The receiving core's all right. I mean, the Lions are by no means any good team. If they make the playoffs, they're going to be like pretty much like 9-8 or like a 10-7, something like that. But I don't like I said, I don't really think the Lions potentially will do it. It's just for some reason I have a feeling that they could potentially have a good year this year just because of like MCDC and all the hype that is around them. But until they prove that it's done, I mean, you can't really take them too seriously. So for the 4 dark horse teams for the AFC, it's going to be the Raiders and Browns, and like I said, it's basically just going to come down to them both having good seasons because a lot of people are looking at them as there's no way just with how good each of their divisions are. And then when it comes to the NFC, the 2 dark horses that I have are the Panthers and 49ers, who are kind of like the same way where they don't see how they're going to win their division or potentially. So their best bet is probably to make the wild card. So those are basically all the division winners, potential playoff teams I see for this upcoming season. This is assuming too that like none of these teams have like major injuries. Like for example, I'm not saying this is going to happen because it'd be awful. Like what happened with the Ravens last year, where they lost like Lamar Jackson for the back end of the season, and they lost this guy and that guy. Basically, they went from being potential division winners to becoming absolutely wrecked. So when it comes to like this year, I have no idea how these teams are going to end up seeding when it comes to them being that. I just think that these are all the real like good playoff teams I think have a good contention of actually doing some damage in the playoffs and actually being able to go somewhere. And now, just to end this, I'll talk about some like little news, just like I'll make it like semi quick, just like brief little things that popped up this week. It seems like Roquan Smith's going to play out his contract for his last year, which I mean is good for him. I hope this is good because hopefully he gets paid by either the Bears or someone that really wants him. When it comes to the Panthers and Matt Corral, it looks like he's going to have season-ending surgery on his foot, which I mean sucks for him. But I mean, I guess he wasn't going to play anyway, so you never want to see somebody get hurt. But in a situation like this, like there's a question mark if he's going to play or not this year. Probably not. So. I mean, hopefully all that comes to this is he gets it fixed and he comes back healthy for next season. And then, when it comes to Seattle and the starting quarterback job, it looks like Drew Lock's probably going to take it because it's looking like they were kind of like over Geno Smith. They kind of seen like what he can be in the NFL, and there's still like some potential hidden ceiling with Drew Lock because, I mean, I don't know truly how fair that is or how true that is, but I mean, there's a potential that I guess Drew Lock probably is a little bit better than Geno Smith maybe, but there's still potential that he has a boom here and there, and he could be really good. So they're looking like they're going to start him after Geno Smith struggles. And then the last thing that was kind of interesting is apparently John Gruden said no to Tom Brady and Gronk joining the Raiders. Now, how true is this? I don't know, obviously, because I wasn't there, but there's Dana White mentioned something about it, and then it's just the idea of Tom Brady potentially being on the Raiders instead of the Buccaneers. That would just be, if Tom Brady was on the Raiders with Gronk, that would have been very interesting to see him in the black and silver instead of like with the Buccaneers in the NFC. Yeah, I just wonder how much that would change like the AFC if he would have stayed there instead of like leaving for the NFC South.